Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance and looked at the stars ahead. The ship was Earth's biggest and strongest vessel, built with the best technology humans had ever created. Jake was the commander, and right now he felt the weight of his whole planet on his shoulders. "Sir, we're getting close to the council station," said Ben Rodriguez from his seat at the controls. Ben was the ship's tactical officer, which meant he watched for trouble and helped plan battles. His voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. Jake nodded and walked to the big window at the front of the bridge. In the distance, he could see a massive structure floating in space near a planet called Kepler 442b. The council station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. It looked like a giant metal flower with 12 petals, each one representing one of the alien races that ruled the galaxy. "How many ships are out there?" Jake asked. 47 alien vessels, all armed and ready for fight," Ben replied. "They're from different species. I can see the crystal ships from the Zephyrians, the living ships from the Hive Collective, and those sleek black ones from the Talon Empire." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Each of those ships could probably destroy the Defiance with ease. The aliens had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, while humans had only learned how to do it 3 years ago. Admiral Lisa Carter walked up beside Jake. She was the leader of this mission, and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Lisa was both a soldier and a diplomat, which made her perfect for this job. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes were sharp and focused. "The council's message was clear," Lisa said quietly. "They want us to come and talk about tribute. Every species that travels between stars has to pay the council or face destruction." Jake looked at her. "And if we refuse?" "Then they destroy us," Lisa said simply. "They've done it before. The history books are full of species that tried to resist. None of them survived." Dr. Amy Turner was sitting at a computer station nearby, reading through files about the Galactic Council. Amy was a scientist who studied alien cultures and biology. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with brown hair and green eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something. "I've been reading about how the council works," Amy said without looking up from her screen. "They've been doing this for over 3,000 years. When a new species learns to travel between stars, the council hauls them to the station. They demand tribute, which means giving them resources, technology, and people." "People?" Jake asked. 50,000 humans every year," Amy said, her voice getting quiet. "They use them as workers in their factories and mines. The people who get taken never come back home." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The idea of aliens taking humans as slaves made him sick, but he knew that Earth's entire military couldn't fight the Council's forces. They had 12 species working together, each with hundreds of ships and weapons that humans had never seen before. "Sir, we're being contacted by the station," said Maria Santos, the ship's communications officer. Maria was a small woman with dark hair and quick hands that moved across her controls like a pianist playing music. "Put it through," Jake said. The main screen lit up with the image of an alien creature. It looked like a giant insect with multiple eyes and sharp mandibles. Its body was covered in shiny black armor, and it stood at least 8 feet tall. "I am High Chancellor Vexthara of the Galactic Council," the creature said. Its voice was translated by the ship's computer, but Jake could hear the clicking and buzzing sounds it was really making. "You are the representatives of the species called humans from the planet Earth." "That's correct," Admiral Carter said, stepping forward. "I am Admiral Lisa Carter, representing the United Earth government." "You will dock with our station immediately," Vexthara said. "The Council will hear your submission and determine your tribute requirements. Resistance is not an option." The screen went black before anyone could respond. Jake looked around the A. Bridge and his crew. These were good people, the best Earth had to offer. Ben had fought in 3 wars and never lost a battle. Maria could hack into any computer system in the galaxy. Amy understood alien cultures better than anyone. And Lisa had spent her whole life protecting humanity. "Sir," Ben said quietly, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from those alien ships. If we try to run, they'll destroy us before we get 100 kilometers. "And if we dock with the station?" Jake asked. "Then we walk into their trap," Ben replied. "But at least we'll be alive long enough to hear what they want." Jake made his decision. "Take us to the docking bay. We came here to represent humanity, and that's what we're going to do." As the Defiance moved toward the Council Station, Jake thought about Earth. 3 billion people were going about their daily lives, not knowing that their future was about to be decided by a handful of humans in a metal box surrounded by alien. Warships thought the docking process was smooth. The Council Station's technology was so advanced that it gently pulled Defiance into place without any help from the human crew. Jake could feel the artificial gravity change as they connected to the station systems. "Full environmental suits," Lisa ordered. "We don't know what kind of atmosphere they have in there." The crew put on their protective gear and checked their weapons. Jake knew the guns wouldn't help them if things went bad, but carrying them made everyone feel a little better. "Remember," Lisa said as they walked toward the airlock, "we're not just representing ourselves. We're representing every human who ever lived and every human who ever will live. Whatever happens in there, we face it with dignity." Jake nodded and opened the airlock door. Beyond it lay the Council Station, a place where the fate of humanity would be decided. He took a deep breath and stepped into the unknown. The council chamber was the biggest room Jake Morrison had ever seen. The walls were carved from solid rock and stretched up so high that he couldn't see the ceiling. Banners hung from the walls, each one showing the symbol of a different alien, species that had surrendered to the council's power. Jake walked beside Admiral Lisa Carter and the rest of the human team. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space as they moved toward the center of the chamber. All around them, alien creatures sat in raised seats, looking down at the humans like judges at a trial. "Stay calm," Lisa whispered to her team. "Don't show fear, no matter what they say or do." In the center of the chamber was a small platform where the humans were supposed to stand. It was surrounded by 12 massive thrones, each one designed for a different type of alien. Jake could see creatures he had never imagined in his worst nightmares. The ethereal collective looked like living clouds of energy that glowed with blue and white light. They floated above their throne, constantly shifting and changing shape. The Stone Lords were exactly what their name suggested, living rocks the size of buildings, with glowing eyes set deep in their mineral faces. The Void Walkers were the strangest of all. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence, sometimes solid and sometimes transparent. Jake couldn't tell if they were really there or just images projected from somewhere else. High, Chancellor Vexthara rose from her throne at the front of the chamber. She was even more frightening in person than she had been on the screen. Her insect-like body was covered in black armor that gleamed under the chamber's lights. Multiple eyes on her head moved independently, each one focused on a different human. "Humans of Earth," she began, her voice booming through the chamber. "You have achieved the ability to travel between stars. This makes you subject to the laws and authority of the Galactic Council." Jake felt his heart beating faster. Dr. Amy Turner had told them about this moment. Every species that learned to travel in space was eventually brought here and forced to submit to the Council's demands. "Your species will provide tribute to maintain order in the galaxy," Vexthara continued. "The tribute from Earth will consist of 3 parts. First, you will give us 20% of all resources produced on your planet. This includes metals, energy, food, and manufactured goods. Captain Ben Rodriguez stood next to Jake, his hands clenched into fists. Ben had spent years fighting to protect Earth from human enemies. Now they faced something much worse. Second, Vexthara said, you will provide us with your quantum tunnel technology. This includes all research, all equipment, and all knowledge related to faster-than-light travel. Jake felt sick. The quantum tunnel drive was humanity's greatest achievement. It had taken them to the stars and given them hope for the future. Without it, Earth would be trapped in its own solar system forever. Third, the High Chancellor continued, you will provide 50,000 humans each year for labor assignments throughout the galaxy. These individuals will be selected by the Council and transported to work sites as needed. The chamber fell silent. Jake looked at the faces of the other council members. Some looked bored, as if they had heard this speech thousands of times before. Others seemed amused by the humans' obvious shock and fear. Dr. Amy Turner stepped forward. Slightly. What happens to the people who are taken? She asked. General Krickstar of the Tawan Empire answered her question. He was a reptilian creature with sharp teeth and claws that could cut through metal. They work until they die, he said with what might have been a smile. Most last about 10 years in the deep space mining operations. That's slavery, Amy sighed, her voice shaking with anger. That's survival, Vexthara replied. Every species in this galaxy has made the same choice. You can submit to our authority and live, or you can resist and face complete destruction. Jake looked around the chamber at the banners on the walls. Each one represented a proud civilization that had been forced to give up their freedom. Amy had told them that some of these species had once been even more advanced than humans, but now they were nothing more than servants to the Council. Admiral Carter stepped forward. We need time to discuss these terms with our government, she said. Vexthara's laugh sounded like breaking glass. There is nothing to discuss, human. These are not terms for negotiation. They are facts. You will accept them now, or your species will be classified as hostile and dealt with accordingly. What does that mean? Jake asked. The High Chancellor gestured to the floor beneath their feet. Jake looked down and saw that the floor was made of transparent material. Below it was a room filled with bones and skulls from dozens of different species. Some were huge, others tiny, but all of them had once belonged to intelligent beings. The Chamber of Bones, Vexthara explained. These are the remains of species that chose to resist the Council's authority. We keep them here as a reminder of what happens to those who value pride over wisdom. Jake felt his stomach turn. There were thousands of bones down there, maybe millions. Each one had once been a thinking, feeling creature with hopes and dreams, just like humans. The combined fleets of the Council have never known defeat, General. Krickstar added, we have weapons that can destroy entire star systems. Your primitive vessels would be nothing more than target practice for our warriors. Ben Rodriguez looked at Jake with questions in his eyes. As a military officer, Ben understood the impossible odds they were facing. The Council had 12 species working together, each with thousands of years of experience in warfare. Earth had maybe 100 combat-ready ships, while the Council had tens of thousands. How long do we have to decide? Admiral Carter asked. You have no time, Vexthara said. The decision is made now, in this chamber. You will accept our terms and begin immediate tribute payments, or you will join the bones beneath your feet. Jake looked at his teammates. Amy was pale but determined. Ben was ready to fight, even though he knew they couldn't win. Maria Santos was recording everything, making sure that Earth would know what had happened here. And Admiral Carter stood straight and proud, representing all of humanity in this moment of ultimate crisis. We need to confer as a team, Carter said firmly. There is nothing to confer about, Vexthara replied. "Give us your answer now, humans. Will you live as our servants or die as our enemies?" Admiral Lisa Carter looked at her team one last time. Jake Morrison stood beside her, his jaw set with determination. Captain Ben Rodriguez had his hand near his weapon, ready for whatever came next. Dr. Amy Turner was pale but focused, her mind working through all the possibilities. Maria Santos kept her recording device running, making sure Earth would know what happened here. The council chamber was completely silent. Every alien eye was focused on the small group of humans standing in the center of the vast room. High, Chancellor Vexthara waited on her throne, her multiple eyes gleaming with confidence. She had done this thousands of times before, and it always ended the same way. General Krickstar of the Talon Empire was cleaning his claws with a small blade. He looked bored, as if he was waiting for something more interesting to happen. The Stone Lords hummed quietly among themselves, their deep voices creating vibrations that Jake could feel in his bones. "We are waiting for your answer, humans," Vexthara said. Her voice echoed through the chamber like the sound of metal scraping against stone. "Will you submit to the Council's authority, or will you choose destruction?" Carter stepped forward. She had spent her whole life serving humanity, first as a soldier and then as a diplomat. She had fought in wars, negotiated peace treaties, and protected Earth from every threat it had faced. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. "The United Earth government has considered your demands," Carter said, her voice carrying clearly through the massive chamber. "We have discussed them with our leaders, our military commanders, and our people." Jake felt his heart pounding. He knew what Carter was going to say, and he also knew it would probably get them all killed. But some things were more important than survival. The council members leaned forward slightly. They expected the usual response: pleas for mercy, attempts to negotiate better terms, or simple acceptance of their demands. That was how it had always worked. Fear made every species eventually submit to the council's power. Ambassador Nith of the Refuge Coalition sat in one of the smaller seats reserved for tributary species. His people had been forced to submit to the council 50 years ago, and he still remembered what freedom felt like. He watched the humans with growing interest, something stirring in his chest that he thought had died long ago. "Your terms are clear," Carter continued. "You want 20% of our resources, all of our technology, and 50,000 of our people every year. You want us to become your servants, just like every other species in this galaxy." "Exactly," Vexthara said, her mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "You understand perfectly. Now give us your acceptance so we can begin the tribute collection process." Dr. Amy Turner had spent weeks studying the Council's history. She knew that over 3,000 years, hundreds of species had stood in this very spot and faced the same choice. Every single one had eventually chosen submission over destruction. The bones beneath their feet proved what happened to those who chose differently. But Amy also knew something else. She had studied human history too. Humans had always been different. They had fought impossible battles and won through stubborn refusal to give up. They had split atoms, walked on their moon, and turned deserts into gardens. They had never been good at accepting defeat. Captain Ben Rodriguez thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was only 8 years old, with bright eyes and a laugh that could light up any room. He imagined her growing up in a world where alien masters decided who lived and who died, where humans were nothing more than slaves to be used and discarded. Maria Santos kept her equipment running, knowing that whatever happened next would be remembered forever. The message would be sent back to Earth through quantum communication, letting humanity know how their representatives had faced the ultimate test. "We have made our decision," Carter said, her voice growing stronger. "We have weighed your demands against our principles. We have considered the consequences of our choice. General Crickstar stopped cleaning his claws and looked up with interest. Something in the human's tone was different from what he usually heard in this chamber. There was no fear, no desperation, no pleading. The ethereal collective's energy forms began to glow brighter, sensing the change in the chamber's atmosphere. The Void Walkers became more solid, as if the moment was important enough to anchor them to reality. "Get on with it," Vexthara said impatiently. "State your acceptance of our terms." Carter straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the High Chancellor. She thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the cities full of people living their lives in freedom. She thought about the children playing in parks, the scientists working in laboratories, the artists creating beautiful things just because they could. She thought about what it meant to be human. "Our response to your demands," Carter said, her voice ringing through the chamber like a bell, "is simple." The entire chamber held its breath. 3,000 years of history hung in the balance. Every species that had ever achieved interstellar travel had faced this moment, and everyone had made the same choice until now. Carter looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at her. She saw the confidence in their eyes, the certainty that they had already won. They had forgotten that not all species were the same. They had forgotten that some beings valued freedom more than life itself. "No," she said. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. It was such a simple word, just 2 letters, but it carried the weight of an entire species' refusal to bow down to tyranny. For the first time in over 3,000 years, someone had said no to the Galactic Council. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Stone Lords stopped their humming. The ethereal collective's glow dimmed to almost nothing. The Void Walkers flickered more rapidly, as if they couldn't decide whether to exist or not. High Chancellor Vexthara's multiple eyes widened in shock. Her mandibles opened and closed without making any sound. General Crickstar dropped his cleaning blade, the metal clanging on the floor like a gunshot in the silence. Ambassador Nith stood up slowly from his seat. His hands were shaking, but not with fear. For the first time in 50 years, he felt something he had thought was dead forever. Hope. "Impossible," Vexthara finally whispered. "No species refuses the Council. It has never happened. It cannot happen." Admiral Carter smiled grimly. "It just did." The Council chamber exploded into chaos. 12 different alien species began talking at once, their voices mixing into a horrible noise that made Jake Morrison's ears hurt. The universal translators couldn't keep up with all the different languages being spoken at the same time. High Chancellor Vexthara rose from her throne to her full height, which was nearly 10 feet tall. Her black armor gleamed under the lights, and her multiple eyes were all focused on Admiral Lisa Carter with deadly intensity. "This is impossible," Vexthara hissed, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "No species has ever refused the Council's demands. You do not understand what you have just done." Carter stood her ground, though Jake could see the muscles in her neck tense with strain. "We understand perfectly, High Chancellor. Humanity chooses death over slavery." General Crickstar of the Talon Empire jumped up from his seat, his reptilian features twisted with rage. His claws extended fully, each one sharp enough to cut through steel. "This cannot be allowed to stand. The humans must be destroyed immediately as an example to others." But something unexpected happened. Ambassador Nith of the Refuge Coalition, who had been sitting quietly in the section reserved for tributary species, slowly stood up. His small frame was shaking, but not with fear. It was shaking with something that had been buried inside him for 50 years. I support the human position," Nith said, his voice barely above a whisper. The chamber fell silent again. Every alien eye turned to stare at the small ambassador. For half a century, Nith's people had paid tribute to the council. They had given up their resources, their technology, and their people. They had watched their civilization slowly die under the weight of the council's demands. Dr. Amy Turner realized what was happening. The human refusal wasn't just about humanity. It was about something that had been missing from the galaxy for thousands of years. It was about the idea that maybe, just maybe, things didn't have to be this way. "You dare speak against the council?" Vexthara demanded, turning her attention to Nith. "Your people submitted legally. You have no right to question our authority." "My people submitted because we were afraid," Nith replied, his voice getting stronger. "We were afraid of dying, so we chose to live as slaves. But watching these humans, they have reminded me that some things are worth dying for." Captain Ben Rodriguez watched as other tributary ambassadors began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Ambassador Zara from the Kepler Federation was staring at the humans with something that looked like admiration. A representative from the Helix Consortium was whispering urgently to his assistant. Even some of the council members seemed uncertain. The Stone Lords were communicating with each other through their deep harmonic voices, creating vibrations that everyone could feel. The ethereal collective's energy forms were flickering more rapidly than usual, as if they were agitated or confused. "This defiance ends now," Vexthara declared, her voice booming through the chamber. "The full military might of the Council will be brought to bear against Earth. Your species will be extinct within one solar cycle. You're welcome to try," Carter said with a grim smile. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that Earth's military couldn't stand against the combined fleets of 12 alien civilizations. But he also knew that his admiral was right. Some things were more important than survival. Maria Santos was still recording everything, her equipment capturing every word and every moment. The quantum transmitter hidden in her uniform would send all of this back to Earth, letting humanity know exactly what had happened here. General Crickstar was pacing back and forth, his claws scraping against the stone floor. "We should kill them now, here in this chamber. Make it quick and clean." "No," said one of the Stone Lords, his voice like rumbling thunder. "If we kill them here, they become martyrs. Other species might see them as heroes who died for their beliefs." "The Stone Lord is correct," added a member of the ethereal collective, its energy form pulsing with thought. "We must destroy their entire civilization completely. Leave no trace that humanity ever existed." But Ambassador Neith spoke up again, his voice carrying further this time. "And what about my people? What about the Kepler Federation? What about all the others who are watching this moment? Do you think you can destroy us all?" More tributary ambassadors were standing up now. Ambassador Zara from the Kepler Federation rose to her feet, her blue skin darkening with determination. "The Kepler Federation withdraws its tribute payments, effective immediately." The representative from the Helix Consortium stood as well. "The consortium will no longer provide forced labor to council projects." Even some of the smaller species were beginning to stir. The galaxy had been quiet for so long, with every civilization accepting their place in the council's order. But now, something was changing. Dr. Amy Turner understood what was happening better than anyone. She had studied the psychology of oppression and resistance. "It's like a dam breaking," she whispered to Jake. "Once one person says no, it becomes easier for others to say no too." High Chancellor Vexthara was beginning to look desperate. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained order through fear and overwhelming force. But fear only worked when people believed they had no choice. "You are all making a terrible mistake," she said, her voice rising to a shriek. "The Council's power is absolute. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species learned to make fire. We have weapons that can destroy entire star systems. Then why are you so afraid of one word? Carter asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. For all their power, for all their advanced technology and massive fleets, the council members looked genuinely frightened for the first time in millennia. Because, said Ambassador Nith, his voice now strong and clear, they know that their power depends on us believing we have no choice. But we do have a choice. We've always had a choice. More species were declaring their independence now. The chamber was filled with voices saying no to the council's authority, refusing to continue living as slaves. The careful order that had existed for thousands of years was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Jake looked at his teammates and saw the same realization in their faces. They had come here expecting to die, but instead they had started something much bigger. They had reminded the galaxy what freedom meant. This ends now, Vexthara screamed. Guards! Arrest all of them? But even as the council's soldiers moved forward, Jake could see the doubt in their eyes. Many of them came from tributary species themselves. They had families and homes that were also under the council's control. The galaxy would never be the same. One simple word had changed everything, and that word was spreading like wildfire through the stars. The council guards moved quickly to arrest the human team, but the damage was already done. Jake Morrison and his crew were placed in metal cells aboard the council station, but Captain Ben Rodriguez had successfully sent their entire conversation back to Earth through the quantum transmitter hidden in Maria Santos's equipment. On Earth, alarms were ringing in every government building. President Kevin Walsh stood before the United Nations Emergency Assembly, his face grave but determined. Behind him, a huge screen showed the message that had just arrived from the council station. My fellow humans, President Walsh began, our representatives have faced the ultimate test of our species' character. They were told to surrender our freedom, our technology, and our people to alien masters. Their response was simple and clear. No. The assembly hall erupted in cheers and applause. Every nation on Earth had put aside their differences to face this threat together. The quantum tunnel technology that the Council wanted so badly had been shared freely among all human governments. If humanity was going to fight, they would fight as one. Back on the Council station, Jake sat in his cell and listened to the chaos outside. Through the small window, he could see alien ships moving in all directions. Some were leaving the station quickly, returning to their home worlds to deal with rebellions that were breaking out everywhere. Dr. Amy Turner was in the cell next to his. Jake, she called softly. Do you hear that? Jake listened carefully. In the distance, he could hear the sound of fighting. The tributary species that had declared independence were not going quietly. Their representatives might be trapped on the station, but their people back home were taking action. Admiral Lissa Carter was brought before an emergency session of the Council. High Chancellor Vexthara looked different now, her confidence replaced by something that might have been fear. Your single word has caused chaos throughout our galaxy, Vexthara said, her mandibles clicking nervously. 17 species have stopped their tribute payments. The Refuge Coalition has seized 3 of our mining stations. The Helix Consortium is converting their merchant ships into warships. Good, Carter replied simply. Millions will die because of what you have done, Vexthara continued. The Council will restore order, no matter the cost. Carter looked directly at the High Chancellor. Millions have already died under your rule. The only difference is that now they will die fighting for something better. Meanwhile, Earth was preparing for war. Every shipyard was working at maximum capacity, building new vessels with the quantum tunnel drive. The technology that had taken humans to the stars was now their greatest weapon, allowing their ships to appear anywhere in a battle without warning. President Walsh addressed the planet again. The Council believes that might makes right, that fear can crush the human spirit. They have forgotten that we are the species that split the atom, that walked on our moon, that turned deserts into gardens. We will show them what humanity truly means. The Council's response was swift and brutal. The largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of Earth's solar system. Thousands of ships from 12 different species, all armed with weapons that could destroy planets. High Chancellor Vexthara commanded the fleet personally, determined to make Earth an example that would terrify any other species thinking of rebellion. But when they arrived at Earth, they found something unexpected waiting for them. Earth's fleet had grown from dozens of ships to hundreds. Human industrial capacity, pushed to its absolute limits, had produced vessels at a rate the Council had thought impossible. More importantly, Earth was not alone. The Refuge Coalition's ships flanked the human vessels, their hulls bearing fresh scars from battles with Council forces. Ambassador Neith stood on the bridge of his flagship, finally free to fight for his people's freedom after 50 years of slavery. Pahélix Consortium had converted their entire merchant fleet into warships. Their cargo holds now carried weapons instead of goods, and their trade routes had become supply lines for the rebellion. Even some species that had served the Council for millennia had sent ships to defend Earth. The sight of humanity's refusal had awakened something in them that had been sleeping for too long. The battle for Earth's independence lasted 3 days and changed the galaxy forever. The Council's fleets were designed for intimidation and control, not for fighting enemies who refused to surrender. They had become soft during their long rule, relying on fear instead of skill. Humanity's quantum tunnel technology gave them a huge advantage. Human ships could appear anywhere on the battlefield, strike quickly, and disappear before the Council forces could respond. The alien commanders had never faced an enemy that could move like this. Captain Ben Rodriguez commanded a squadron of Earth's newest ships. His daughter's picture was taped to his control panel, reminding him what he was fighting for. All ships. This is Rodriguez. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species that wants to be free. The battle turned when Ambassador Neith's fleet managed to destroy the Council's command ship. High Chancellor Vexthara's final transmission was heard across the entire battlefield. This is impossible. We are the Council. We cannot be defeated. But Admiral Carter, now free and commanding the Earth fleet from the bridge of the U.E.'s Defiance, had a different word in mind. As she watched the Council's remaining ships retreat in disorder, she spoke into her communicator. Attention all ships. This is Admiral Carter. The word for today is not impossible. The word for today is freedom. When the smoke cleared, the Council's iron grip on the galaxy had been shattered. Some of their species sued for peace immediately. Others tried to fight on alone, but without the unity that had made them strong, they were defeated one by one. The Galactic Council, which had ruled for over 3,000 years, was finished. In its place rose something new, a confederation of free species, each governing themselves, but working together for mutual protection and prosperity. Jake Morrison stood on Earth's surface once again, breathing the clean air of his home world. The quantum communicator in his hand carried messages from dozens of species across the galaxy, all thanking humanity for showing them that freedom was possible. Dr. Amy Turner was already working with alien scientists, sharing knowledge freely, instead of demanding tribute. The galaxy was learning that cooperation worked better than domination. And Admiral Carter sat in her office, writing her final report on the mission. She ended it with a simple sentence. The galaxy discovered that one word, spoken with courage, can change everything. That word was distinctly human. No.